Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to assignment number 8 of Dracula. I realize now in getting my pages ready for assignment number 7 of Dracula that I told you to go too far in assignment 6. I told you to read up to page 207. That was not true. You should have only read to page 177. I will make note of that in the assignment, so hopefully everybody sees that and doesn't go too far. But if you did, hey, then you have most of assignment number 7 done, all right, and you have less to do today. So my apologies. So let's go. Well, when we left off at the end of assignment number 6, or where you should have left off, was right at the point where Arthur had given the blood transfusion to his fiancee, Lucy. And right now he's very weakened after the case. And now we're going to find out, did that transfusion work? I mean, she's probably going to be a little bit better up until, of course, somebody comes and takes that blood away from her. But we'll get to that when we get to that. So let's go. Assignment number 7. I am on page 177 in the second full paragraph when it says, when all was over, I could see how much Arthur was weakened. So I'm going to start from there. When all was over, I could see how much Arthur was weakened. I dressed the wound and took his arm to bring him away. When Van Helsing spoke without turning round, the man seems to have his eyes in the back of his head. The brave lover, I think, deserves another kiss, which he shall have presently. And as he had, pardon me, and as he had now finished his operation, he adjusted the pillow to the patient's head. Pardon. As he did so, the narrow black velvet band, which she seems always to wear around her throat, buckled with an old diamond buckle which her lover had given her, was dragged a little up and showed a red mark on her throat. So it appears, much like a high school kid hiding a hickey with a turtleneck or a sweatshirt, Lucy has been hiding her neck with a velvet black band to hide those little pinprick marks on her neck. Arthur did not notice it, but I could hear the deep hiss of indrawn breath, which is one of Van Helsing's ways of betraying emotion. He said nothing at the moment, but turned to me saying, okay, I think the minute that Van Helsing saw that on her neck, I think he now knows what's going on, or at least has a bad feeling about it. Now take down our brave young lover, give him of the port wine, and let him lie down a while. He must go home and rest, sleep and eat much, that he may be recruited of what he has so given of his love. He must not stay here. Hold a moment. I may take it, sir, that you are anxious of result. Then bring it with you, that in all ways the operation is successful. You have saved her life this time, and you can go home and rest easy in mind that all that can be is. I shall tell her all when she is well. She shall love you nonetheless for what you have done. Goodbye. When Arthur had gone, I went back to the room. Lucy was sleeping gently, but her breathing was stronger. I could see the counterpane move as her breast heaved. By the bedside sat Van Helsing, looking at her intently. The velvet band again covered the red mark. I asked the professor in a whisper, what do you make of that mark on her throat? What do you make of it? I have not examined it yet, I answered, and then and there proceeded to loose the band. Just over the external jugular vein, there were 2 punctures, not large, but not wholesome looking. There was no sign of disease, but the edges were white and worn looking, as if by some trituration. It at once occurred to me that this wound, or whatever it was, might be the means of that manifest loss of blood. Hello? But I abandoned the idea as soon as it formed, for such a thing could not be. The whole bed would have been drenched to a scarlet with the blood which the girl must have lost to leave such a pallor as she had before the transfusion. Well, said Van Helsing. Well, said I, can make nothing of it. The professor stood up. I must go back to Amsterdam tonight, he said. There are books and things there which I want. You must remain here all night, and you must not let your sight pass from her. Shall I have a nurse, I asked. We are the best nurses, you and I. You keep watch all night. See that she is well fed and that nothing disturbs her. You must not sleep all the night. Later on we can sleep, you and I. I shall be back as soon as possible, and then we may begin. May begin, I said. What on earth do you mean? We shall see, he answered as he hurried out. He came back a moment later and put his head inside the door and said with a warning finger held up, remember, she is your charge. If you leave her and harm befalls, you shall not sleep easy hereafter. I think Dr. Van Helsing knows what's going on. He's going back to get proof. Dr. Swart's diary continued. 8 September. I sat up all night with Lucy. The opiate worked itself off towards dusk, and she walked naturally. She looked a different being from what she had been before the operation. Her spirits were good, even, and she was full of a happy vivacity. But I could see evidences of the absolute prostration which she had undergone. When I told Mrs. Westenra that Dr. Van Helsing had directed that I should sit up with her, she almost pooh-poohed the idea, pointing out her daughter's renewed strength and excellent spirits. I was firm, however, and made preparations for my long vigil. When her maid had prepared her for the night, I came in, having in the meantime had supper, and took a seat by the bedside. She did not in any way make objection, but looked at me gratefully whenever I put her on. After a long spell, she seemed sinking off to sleep, but with an effort seemed to pull herself together and shook it off. So it's almost as if she doesn't want to go to sleep because she knows when she goes to sleep, the bad stuff happens. Not for nothing, but I want to point it out. How are you supposed to feel after you wake up after a night of sleep? Better or worse than you were when you went to sleep? You're supposed to feel better. In fact, think about sicknesses when you sleep. Oftentimes when you have a cold or something, the flu or something, how do you gauge if you're okay? By when you wake up, you check. First thing you check is yourself. You ask yourself, how am I any better? And if you're a little bit better, you move on. So have you noticed that most of our healing happens while we sleep? Think about poor Lucy. She's waking up feeling worse every day, much, much worse every day. As a parent that she did not want to sleep, so I tackled the subject at once. You do not want to sleep? No, I am afraid. Afraid to go to sleep? Why so? It is the boon we all crave for. Aha, not if you were like me. If sleep was to you a presage of horror. A presage of horror? What do you mean? I don't know. Oh, I don't know. And that is what is so terrible. All this weakness comes to me in sleep until I dread the very thought. But my dear girl, you may sleep tonight. I am here watching you, and I can promise that nothing will happen. Ah, I can trust you, she said. I seized the opportunity and said, I promise that if I see any evidence of bad dreams, I will wake you at once. You will? Oh, you will really? How good you are to me. Then I will sleep. And almost at the word, she gave a deep sigh of relief and sank back asleep. All night long, I watched her. She never stirred, but slept on in a deep, tranquil, life-giving, health-giving sleep. Her lips were slightly parted, and her breast rose and fell with the regularity of a pendulum. There was a smile on her face. It was evident that no bad dreams had come to disturb her peace of mind. In the early morning, her maid came, and I left her in her care and took myself back home, for I was anxious about many things. I sent a short wire to Van Helsing and to Arthur, telling them of the excellent result of the operation. My own work, with its manifold arrears, took me all day to clear off. It was dark when I was able to inquire about my zoophagus patient. The report was good. He had been quite quiet for the past day and night. A telegram came from Van Helsing at Amsterdam whilst I was at dinner, suggesting that I should be at Hillingham tonight, as it might be well to be at hand, and stating that he was leaving by the night mail and would join me early in the morning. So I guess he's saying make sure you stay with her again tonight. 9 September, I was pretty tired and worn out when I got to Hillingham. For 2 nights, I had hardly had a wink of sleep, and my brain was beginning to feel that numbness which marks cerebral exhaustion. Lucy was up and in cheerful spirits. When she shook hands with me, she looked sharply in my face and said, I'm sitting up tonight for you. You are worn out. I am quite well again. Indeed, I am. And if there is to be any sitting up, it is I who will sit up with you. I would not argue the point, but went and had my supper. Lucy came with me, and enlivened by her charming presence, I made an excellent meal and had a couple of glasses of the more than excellent port. Then Lucy took me upstairs and showed me a room next to her own where a cozy fire was burning. Now, she said, you must stay here. I shall leave this door open and my door too. You can lie on the sofa, for I know that nothing would induce any of you doctors to go to bed whilst there is a patient above the horizon. If I want anything, I shall call out, and you can come to me at once. I could not but acquiesce, for I was dog tired and could not have sat up had I tried. So on her renewing her promise to call me if she should want anything, I lay on the sofa and forgot all about everything. Lucy Westover's diary, 9 September. I feel so happy tonight. I've been so miserably weak that to be able to think and move about is like feeling sunshine after a long spell of east wind out of a steel sky. Sometimes Arthur feels very, very close to me. I seem to feel his presence warm about me. I suppose that sickness and weakness are selfish things and turn our inner eyes and sympathy on ourselves, whilst health and strength give love rein, and in thought and feeling he can wander where he wills. I know where my thoughts are. If only Arthur knew. My dear, your ears must tingle as you sleep, as mine do waking. Oh, the blissful rest of last night. How I slept with that dear, good Dr. Sword watching me. And tonight I shall not fear to sleep, since he is close at hand and within call. Thank everybody for being so good to me. Thank God. Good night, Arthur. All right, did you hear that, everybody? She said, I got this good doctor in the next room sleeping, so nothing bad can happen to me. And she's going to go to sleep. And of course, what is going to happen? The bat is going to come to the window, use his mind control, have her open the window, come in, and he is going to drink her blood. Dr. Sword's diary, 10 September. I was conscious of the professor's hand on my head and started awake all in a second. That is one of the things that we learn in an asylum at any rate. Actually, that is funny. If you work in an asylum, or probably like in like a prison or something, you probably do learn to wake very fast. I know people in conflicts and wars, They learn to wake very fast. You hear a noise, boom, you're up, because you're worried that you could be hurt or somebody could be hurt. Doctors probably too in hospitals, probably firemen too. You got to wake up really quickly and get to work. So he says, I'm laying there and the doctor touches my head and boom, I jumped right awake. And I have to because of my working in the nut house, the asylum. And how is our patient? Well, when I left her, or rather when she left me, I answered. Come, let us see, he said, and together we went into the room. Okay, so they're about to walk into the room. What are they going to find? I'm expecting a window open and a pale Lucy in the bed. Let's see, maybe I'm wrong. The blind goes down, and I went over to raise it gently, while Van Helsing stepped with his soft cat-like tread over to the bed. As I raised the blind and the moonlight sunlight flooded the room, I heard the professor's low hiss of inspiration, and knowing its rarity, a deadly fear shot through my heart. As I passed over, he moved back, and in his exclamation of horror, Gott in Himmel, needed no enforcement from his agonized face. Excuse me. He raised his hand and pointed to the bed, and his iron face was drawn and ashen white. I felt my knees begin to tremble. There on the bed, seemingly in a swoon, which means faint, lay poor Lucy, more horribly white and wan-looking than ever. Even the lips were white, and the gums seemed to have shrunken back from the teeth, as we sometimes see in a corpse after a prolonged illness. Van Helsing raised his foot to stamp in anger, but the instinct of his life and all the young years of habit stood to him, and he put it down again softly. Quick, he said, bring the brandy. I flew to the dining room and returned with the decanter. He wetted the poor white lips with it, and together we rubbed the palm and wrist and heart. He felt her heart, and after a few moments of agonizing suspense said, it is now too late. It beats, though but feebly. All our work is undone. We must begin again. There is no young Arthur here now. I have to call on you yourself this time, friend John. As he spoke, he was dipping into his bag and producing the instruments of transfusion. I had taken off my coat and rolled up my shirt sleeve. There was no possibility of an opiate just at present, and no need of one. And so, without a moment's delay, we began the operation. After a time, it did not seem a short time either, for the draining away of one's blood, no matter how willingly it be given, is a terrible feeling. Van Helsing held up a warning finger. Do not stir, he said, but I fear that with growing strength she may wake, and that would make danger, oh, so much danger. But I shall precaution take. I shall give hypodermic injection of morphia. He proceeded then swiftly and deftly to carry out his intent. So he just said, I am worried that she is going to wake up, and I'm going to stop that from happening, because if she wakes up, something bad will happen. So he gives her a draught. Let's see, like a sleeping draught, a drug, a morphia. Probably morphine. I'm thinking if it said morphia, it's probably morphine. I lost my spot. There it is. The effect on Lucy was not bad, for the faint seemed to merge subtly into a narcotic sleep. It was a feeling of personal pride that I could see a faint tinge of color steal back into the pallid cheeks and lips. Now, he says it's personal pride because it's his blood that he gave her, but technically, he's the budhead who fell asleep while she was sleeping and allowed her to be attacked again. I don't think he knows that yet, though, but I think the doctor's about to tell him. But then again, he couldn't have stayed up a third night. What should he have done? He should have gotten somebody else to stay up with her. No man knows till he experiences it what it is to feel his own lifeblood drawn away into the veins of the woman he loves. The professor watched me critically. That will do, he said. Already, I remonstrated. You took a great deal more from Art, to which he smiled a sad sort of smile as he replied, he is her lover, her fiancé. You have work, much work to do for her and for others, and the present will suffice. When we stopped the operation, he attended to Lucy whilst I applied digital pressure on my own incision. I laid down while I waited his leisure to attend to me, for I felt faint and a little sick. By and by, he bound up my wound and sent me downstairs to get a glass of wine for myself. As I was leaving the room, he came after me and half whispered, mind, nothing must be said of this. If our young lover should turn up unexpected as before, no word to him. It would at once frighten and jealous him too. There must be none. So, all right, again, this is interesting. He says, don't tell Arthur that you gave her blood for two reasons. One, we don't want to worry him that she got sick again. And two, we don't want to get him jealous, because remember, he's her fiance, and he's saying that he might be worried that because you gave her your blood, that's kind of like a lover type of thing to do. It's a little too much, and it might make him jealous. Also, remember, Arthur knows that this man asked his wife, his fiance, to marry him, and that she said no to him. So he knows that he has feelings for her. But I don't know. I don't think Arthur would do that. But, Van Helsing is worried about that, so he tells him that. Okay, let's go on. When I came back, he looked at me carefully and then said, you are not much the worse. Go into that room and lie on your sofa and rest a while. Then have much breakfast and come back here to me. I followed out his orders, for I knew how right and wise they were. I had done my part, and now my next duty was to keep up my strength. I felt very weak, and in the weakness lost something of the amazement at what had occurred. Excuse me. I fell asleep on the sofa, however, wondering over and over again how Lucy had such a retrograde movement and how she could have drained of so much blood with no sign anywhere to show for it. Okay, so he's like, wait a minute. She went to bed, she was fine. She woke up, her blood is gone, but yet where's the blood? It's not all over the bed. It's not all over the floor. I think I must have continued my wonder in my dreams, for sleeping and waking, my thoughts always came back to the little punctures in her throat and the ragged, exhausted appearance of their edges, tiny though they were. Lucy slept well into the day, and when she woke, she was fairly well and strong, though not nearly so much as the day before. When Van Helsing had seen her, he went out for a walk, leaving me in charge, with strict injunctions that I was not to leave her for a moment. I could hear his voice in the hall, asking the way to the nearest telegraph office. Lucy chatted with me freely and seemed quite unconscious that anything had happened. I tried to keep her amused and interested. When her mother came up to see her, she did not seem to notice any change whatever, but said to me gratefully, "We owe you so much, Dr. Sword, for all you have done. But you really must not take care not to overwork yourself. You're looking pale yourself." Now, again, he's looking pale because he just gave her his blood. But that's the thing. He didn't have it taken from him. But when you lose your blood, you get pale, which is what's happening to her. You want a wife to nurse and look after you a bit. That you do. As she spoke, Lucy turned crimson, though it was only momentarily, for her poor wasted veins could not stand for long an unwanted drain to the head. Now, why, when the mom said, "You need a good wife," did Lucy turn crimson? Well, she's blushing because she said no to him. So she feels kind of bad. The reaction came in an excessive pallor as she turned imploring eyes on me. I smiled and nodded and laid my finger on my lips. With a sigh, she sank back among her pillows. And nicely, he looks at her and goes, "Don't worry, you didn't. It's not your fault that I don't have a wife." Van Helsing returns in a couple of hours and presently said to me, "Now you go home and eat much and drink enough. Make yourself strong. I stay here tonight and I shall sit up with little miss myself. You and I must watch the case and we must have none other to know. I have grave reasons. No, do not ask me. Think what you will. Do not fear to think even the most not improbable good night." He says, "No, I'm not going to tell you what's going on, but I want you to start thinking about it and don't put aside anything that you would say can't happen. It's impossible." He says, "Keep your mind open." In the hall, two of the maids came to me and asked if they or either of them might not sit up with Miss Lucy. They implored me to let them, and when I said it was Dr. Van Helsing's wish that either he or I should sit up, they asked me quite piteously to intercede with the foreign gentleman. I was much touched by their kindness. Perhaps it is because I am weak at present, and perhaps it because it was on Lucy's account that their devotion was manifested. For over and over again have I seen similar instances of women's kindness. I got back here in time for a late dinner and went my rounds, all well, and set this down whilst waiting for sleep. It is coming. 11th of September. This afternoon, I went over to Hillingham, found Van Helsing in excellent spirits, and Lucy much better. Shortly after I arrived, a big parcel from abroad came from the professor. He opened it with much impressment, assumed, of course, and showed a great bundle of white flowers. "These are for you, Miss Lucy," he said. "For me? Oh, Dr. Van Helsing." "Yes, my dear, but not for you to play with. These are my medicines." Here Lucy made a wry face. "Nay, but they are not to take in a decoration or in a nauseous form, so you need not snub that so charming nose, or I shall point out to my friend Arthur what woes he may have to endure in seeing so much beauty that he loves so much distort. Aha, my pretty miss, that brings the so nice nose all straight again. This is medicinal, but you do not know how. I put him in your window. I make pretty wreath and hang him around your neck, so you sleep well. Oh yes, they, like the lotus flower, make your trouble forgotten. It smells so like the waters of Lethe, and of that fountain of youth that the conquistadors sought for in the Floridas and find him all too late." While he was speaking, so he basically said, "You're going to wear this wreath of flowers, and I'm going to put these wreath of flowers around your windowsill." Does anybody know what type of flowers he's putting up there? What plant is said to repel the vampire? Whilst he was speaking, Lucy had been examining the flowers and smelling them. Now she threw them down, saying with half laughter and half disgust, "Oh, Professor, I believe you are only putting up a joke on me. Why, these flowers are only common garlic." To my surprise, Van Helsing rose up and said with all its sternness, his iron jaw set and his bushy eyebrows meeting, "No trifling with me, I never jest. There is a grim purpose in what I do, and I warn you that you do not thwart me. Take care, for the sake of others is not for your own." Then seeing poor Lucy scared, as well she might be, he went on more gently, "Oh, little miss, my dear, do not fear me. I only do for your good, but there's much virtue to you in those common flowers." Interesting. It was like the only time we've ever seen Dr. Van Helsing really mad, and he's like, "No, you will not remove those flowers." And then when he sees that he scares her, he comes to her and he goes, "I'm sorry. Just understand why. I only do for your good, but there is much virtue to those in those common flowers. See, I place them myself in your room. I make myself the wreath that you are to wear, but hush. No telling to others that make so inquisitive questions. We must obey, and silence is part of obedience. And obedience is to bring you strong and well into the loving arms that wait for you. Now sit still a while. Come with me, friend John, and you shall help me deck the room with my garlic, which is all the war from Harlem, where my friend Vanderpool raised herb in his glass houses all the year. I had to telegraph yesterday, or they would not have been here. So I guess what we're learning now is his friend that runs a greenhouse and grows garlic. That's how he was able to get the garlic so quickly. We went into the room. This is my last paragraph, ladies and gentlemen. We went into the room taking the flowers with us. The professor's actions were certainly odd and not to be found in any pharmacopoeia that I ever heard of. First, he fastened up the windows and latched them securely. Next, taking a handful of flowers, he rubbed them all over the sashes as though to ensure that every whiff of air that might get in would be laden with the garlic smell. If anybody read, oh crap, it was the summer reading book. I'm having a brain freeze right now. I shouldn't have brought it up without having it in my mind. Is it I Am Legend? I Am Legend. If you read I Am Legend over the summer, I believe that was the one. Whatever the summer reading book was, it'll come to me in a moment. You'll recall that he does the exact same thing in the book. He grows his own garlic, and he actually puts the garlic around the windows, and he puts the oil around the door frames and the window frames. Then with a wisp, he rubbed all over the jamb of the door, above, below, and at each side, and round the fireplace in the same way. It all seemed grotesque to me, and presently I said, well, Professor, I know you always have a reason for what you do, but this certainly puzzles me. It is well we have no skeptic here, where he would say that you were working some spell to keep out an evil spirit. Interesting. Foreshadowing. He says it's like you're working some spell to keep out an evil spirit. That is exactly what he's doing. And notice he did the fireplace, the windows, the doorway. So anyway, in or out of this room, he is covered with it. Perhaps I am, he answered quietly as he began to make the wreath which Lucy was to wear around her neck. We then went and waited while Lucy made her toilet for the night. And when she was in bed, he came and himself fixed a wreath of garlic around her neck. The last words he said to her were, all right, I'm stopping there. So we are on page 189. Your job for this is to read up to page 211. This time I'm sure about it. So you have another 22 pages to read. Shouldn't take you that long. Please enjoy it. Find out more about Lucy. Are they going to be able to save Lucy? Will Dracula let his happy meal be taken away from him in the night? Apparently, Dracula gets quite hungry at night, and he wants to finish his meal, I bet. Not much of a happy meal, though. I apologize for the joke. Have a lovely day, everybody. I will see you tomorrow. Please, again, finish assignment number 7. Answer all those questions. Read up to page 211 on the online version, or at least just answer the last question if you're using a different version, or the book itself. And have a great day.